The Patriots have too many wide receivers, so who makes the team? We break it all down here on PatsCast.
PatsCast buzzing, who's gonna stay? Receiver room's tight, can't keep all the play. Kendrick Bourne, been around the block.
Welcome to PatsCast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Good to be with you. Patriots have a good problem right now, a problem that they really haven't had in recent years. Too many solid receivers on the roster. Now, I use that word solid very loosely because we still have no idea what's going to happen with Jaylen Polk or Javvon Baker. You know, they were drafted last year to potentially be real projects. Jaylen Polk should have been an impact starter right away. Javvon Baker was always going to be a bit of a long-term project. So how that ultimately plays out is really interesting because I am happy with the moves that the Patriots have made this offseason. Even if they weren't able to draft a Travis Hunter or trade for an A.J. Brown or get Brandon Ayuk or one of these superstar players, they still added Stefon Diggs, who looks like he's going to be healthy and ready to go as soon as week 1. So let's break down all the different receivers that the Patriots have, because NFL teams typically keep about 5 to 6 receivers on their active roster. Now, I think the Patriots are going to carry 6. Might they consider carrying 7? There's a real potential there, but as of right now, there is just a ton of depth now at the receiver position that we haven't seen in recent years. Of course, there's the acquisition of Stefon Diggs in the offseason, who presumably will be your number 1 wide receiver. Demario Douglas is still on the roster. Mac Hollins, the former Las Vegas Raider, was acquired in free agency. Kendrick Bourne is still around. Jaylen Polk, of course. Javvon Baker still around. Don't forget about Kahan Booty. Had a hell of a year 2 leap. Also potentially could be a trade candidate. Patriots drafted Kyle Williams, also, who has the potential to be a starter right away. And let's also not forget about Sir Efton Chisholm III, who I have a real chance of making this roster as an undrafted free agent and potentially being a immediate special teams contributor who can eventually develop into their next Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type player. So why don't we break down the 4 guys that I see on the bubble right now? So first off, Stefon Diggs, going to make the team. Demario Douglas, going to make the team. Kyle Williams was just drafted. Should start right away, potentially. He's going to make the team. They wouldn't have signed Mac Hollins just to cut him, so he'll be on the team. So it really comes down to really the 4 players that I'm going to talk about here, and if they're going to be cut, traded, or demoted to the practice squad. A lot of things could happen. And why don't we start with Kendrick Bourne, because he's in a very interesting situation right now. He's the only wide receiver on this Patriots roster that played under Josh McDaniels in this offense. He is a veteran player, definitely has matured a lot from young Kendrick Bourne to the guy that he is now. He did have an interview recently that did raise some red flags. It was an honest interview, and I appreciated him saying it, and ultimately that may go a long ways toward Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels deciding to keep him on the roster, but he basically said, I had a real hard time becoming a leader in that locker room last year. All of these young Gen Z players coming into the league with their own interests, and him as a veteran player being the oldest player in the wide receiver room, one of the oldest players on the team, you know, coming off of an ACL injury in 2024 as well, and having to fit himself in the mix there. You know, Kendrick Bourne, it took him about 2/3 of the season, really 3/4 of the season, to come back and be the player that we saw in previous years. And that gives him some upside, right? You know, he's now going to be a year and a half removed from that injury. So I think it really comes down to, can Kendrick Bourne be that veteran leader in the locker room that he wasn't last year with all the young guys there? Now, I think it helps that there is some other veteran leadership on that roster now, adding Stefon Diggs. Mac Hollins, kind of a weird dude, but a likable, charismatic dude that's going to really keep things going in the locker room and still holding the younger players accountable. I could also see Kendrick Bourne potentially being traded, too. You know, he was rumored to be the piece that would have happened in the Brandon Ayuk trade that was rumored last offseason and last season, and we've heard Brandon Ayuk's name thrown around even this offseason, and Kendrick Bourne was kind of the trade piece because he played in San Francisco before. I don't think he would mind going back there, but he does really like New England. And this is a guy that is likable from the fans and has been a real contributor at times in a Patriots uniform and has seen a lot of weird offenses in the time that he's been here, with starting with Josh McDaniels and then, of course, with the Matt Patricia experiment and Bill O'Brien and then Alex Van Pelt last year. Kendrick Bourne, I think, is going to be a lot more comfortable, even though it's a lot more complex, a lot more comfortable in this Josh McDaniels offense, and I think he could be a real contributor there. So he is definitely the most interesting situation of all these players that I'm going to mention today. But Kendrick Bourne, I'll tell you if I think he makes the team after I get through these next players. But next up, we have Jaylen Polk, the 2024 second-round disappointment. Looked like he was going to be a real contributor, right? Great hands coming out of college, high football IQ, known as a real mature NFL-ready prospect, and he was everything but those things as a rookie. And it looked like he'd be impactful in the preseason. Week 1, he was separating at a clip that put him in the top 5 in the NFL. Things were looking really up for Jaylen Polk, and then I don't know what happened. There was the drop passes, drop catches, lots of situations with the route running and not being able to fit in the offense. There was the instance where Gerard Mayo said, I think with Jaylen Polk, it's not physical, it's not athletic, it's all mental. And Jaylen Polk responded, I'm not mental. That was not a great look either. He was just saying it's a mental issue that you need. It's like having the yips in golf. And Jaylen Polk took it a little too literally there. So there are a lot of issues with Jaylen Polk happening right now, and there's also the clip, there are some off-season clips floating around of him doing various workouts, getting ready for year 2, and I'm going to be honest, doesn't pass the eye test. He looks slow. He doesn't look quick. The route running is not crisp. Mike Vrabel didn't draft this guy, and, maybe because Elliott Wolf is sticking around there, they'll keep him around. He was a second-round pick last year. But I don't know. I really don't know about Jaylen Polk. And this is a guy where if you do cut him, I think someone would scoop him up because there is some potential. And there's an argument that Jaylen Polk just needs a new situation. It obviously didn't work out well in New England last year. Maybe he just needs a new environment, go to a new team, and see how that works out for him. And maybe can develop into the receiver that we thought he might be. There is a real argument there. But overall, this is not a Mike Vrabel selection. Mike Vrabel obviously had massive influence in the draft. I think he was the one ultimately making the picks, the final decision maker, even though it was very collaborative with Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott Wolf and Stretch and Ryan Cowden and Matt Groves still roaming around somewhere. I don't know. I don't think Mike Vrabel is going to be as committed to Jaylen Polk as some people think, just because he was a second-round pick last year. I would like to think if Vrabel were the head coach last year, they would have drafted Ladd McConkey, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. But that's the situation right now for Jaylen Polk. Then you have Javvon Baker, who I'm actually a lot higher on than most Patriots fans at this point. Javvon Baker was never going to play a lot last year, and I said that after the Patriots drafted him. Maybe he can develop at a faster clip and see the field quite a bit, but he was always going to be a bit of a project, in the same way that the Patriots drafting Kahan Booty the year before was a bit of a project. Now, Kahan Booty made a big leap as a rookie into year 2. I think Javvon Baker has the potential to be that. I mean, he was an explosive deep threat at the University of Central Florida, a raw route runner, but I think he's gonna learn a lot from veterans like Stephon Diggs and Mac Hollins. And here's the thing. I think if you put Jaylen Polk on the practice squad, someone's going to go snag him, right? That's what happens in the NFL. Teams can steal practice squad players if they don't make the final 53-man roster. Javvon Baker, on the other hand, is not going to be plucked away if you put him on the practice squad. We've also had some indicators that Mike Vrabel has reached out to Javvon Baker, that he's put his arm around Javvon Baker. This is the type of guy that I think Mike Vrabel likes. bit of a raw route runner, kind of a personality that I don't want to say he's like a diva or anything, but there were some red flags coming out of college, and I did a long podcast after the Patriots started rookie minicamp last year, and the list was long for Javvon Baker, but I think this is the type of guy that Mike Vrabel's gonna put his arm around and gonna be patient with long term, and ultimately they're gonna stick with. So I'm actually a little higher on Javvon Baker than I was Jaylen Polk, because Baker was the high ceiling choice. Polk was allegedly the low floor choice, but unfortunately, if Polk or the high floor choice, but unfortunately, Polk had a low floor. That doesn't give you a lot because he did not have the ceiling of a guy like Javvon Baker. I don't know. A lot of people think Baker's gone and Polk will stick around because he's a second-round pick. I just don't see it that way personally. And then last but not least, Kahan Booty. 2023 6th-round pick, former LSU star who really flashed early in his college career and then didn't do much, had some issues his final year at LSU. But because the talent was there, because he was a highly recruited prospect out of high school, Bill Belichick decided to take a flyer on him in the 6th round. We saw the issues in Bill Belichick's final year with Kahan Booty. He did see the field in week 1, didn't put a second foot down in a game that the Patriots could have won against the Philadelphia Eagles, if you remember that game. And then he was basically in the doghouse for the rest of the season. Well, Kahan Booty developed into a real contributor last year. I think Drake May was more comfortable throwing the ball to Hunter Henry. Perhaps he was more comfortable throwing the ball to Demario Douglas, although it took a little while for them to build up that chemistry. Kahan Booty and Drake May were connecting right away. That was his first touchdown. Remember that. End of the second half. Kahan Booty ran a vertical route downfield, and Drake May found him in the end zone. There were a number of throws like that happened all season. Deep bombs from Drake May to Booty. The question is, where does Booty fit on this roster right now? Because he is an NFL starter caliber player right now, especially heading into year 3. If you took that leap in year 2, you expect he would develop even more in year 3. But like I said, the question is the fit, and I think that is why he is rumored to be on the trade block, and in all likelihood, he will be traded away, because Jaylen Polk, who's going to trade for him at this point? Javvon Baker, there's some potential there, but he hasn't proven anything. Kendrick Bourne, potential trade candidate, but he's up there in age. Kahan Booty, heading into the prime of his career right now, coming off of a decent second year in the NFL that nobody really expected. I think Patriots might trade him away because now he has to compete with Mac Hollins, who might play that role, Kyle Williams, who might play that role as well. And I think those guys might be better than Kahan Booty, as great as Booty looked in year 2. There are also still some issues that Booty had as a rookie in terms of route running, being in the right place. And Drake May hasn't said anything directly, but I'm getting the vibes that even though they did have a good on-field connection, that May was a little bit frustrated with Booty just not being in the right place. The football IQ isn't necessarily there that you would hope, and especially heading into year 2 of his career. I don't know. Kahan Booty's an interesting situation. But overall, I'm going to reveal who I think will make this Patriots roster in the wide receiver room. And I have 6 players. So not going with the 7th as of right now. Starts with wide receiver number 1. Of course, that's going to be Stephon Diggs. I have him in the Z receiver role, which means he's going to be lining up off the line. Josh McDaniels can move him around in a number of different places. He's a good fit there, and it looks like he's going to be ready to go week 1, at least from the film that we've seen so far this offseason. Wide receiver number 2, it could be Kyle Williams. He might be their second best receiver, but as of right now, I'm still giving that to Demario Douglas. I think we forget sometimes how good Demario Douglas is and how great of a fit he's going to be with Josh McDaniels. As soon as the Patriots drafted Douglas, who they drafted after Booty, believe it or not, and I was hoping they would take Douglas and was shocked that they took Booty, and then they still took Douglas, which I was grateful for. he was a contributor right away as a rookie, and his numbers improved in year 2, and he did that in 2 very different offenses with 2 different offensive coordinators. Now he has Josh McDaniels, who's going to know how to use him as a slot receiver, as he did with Jacoby Myers, as he did with Julian Edelman, as he's done with other slot receivers in New England over the years. I think he's your wide receiver number 2, but I do give Kyle Williams a close wide receiver number 3. I do think he's going to start right away. And I was listening to Colin Cowherd talk about this, and I know, take Colin Cowherd's takes with a grain of salt, but he does know college football, particularly in the Pacific Northwest. There aren't a lot of people watching games with some of those teams. So he's watched Kyle Williams a lot and thinks he'll start right away, especially with this New England Patriots receiving core. You know, twitchy wide receiver, incredible release off the line, fast speed. Put him in that X role. Maybe a little undersized to be that boundary X wide receiver, but he did that a lot in college, more so than he lined up in the slot. I think he's your starter there right away, but I could be wrong. I think Mack Hollins is a solid number 4 wide receiver to Kyle Williams, so it may be that Mack Hollins starts early in the season as wide receiver number 3 in that X role, and then kind of swaps out Kyle Williams throughout the game. Really, I see those guys going back and forth and competing for that third starting job. But Mack Hollins is, you know, he's not a high volume guy, but he's a guy that can run vertical. And, you know, that's the issue here with Kahan Booty, right? Is I think Mack Hollins could potentially serve that role. And he's a better yards after catch guy, in my opinion. So, really comes down to those 4. Stefon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, and Mack Hollins. 3 of those guys are going to start, and the other guy's going to get a ton of playing time. That's how I see it right now. As the 5th wide receiver, I still have Kendrick Bourne. Like I said, I think there is value that he's been in Josh McDaniels' offense before. I think his concerns about not being a leader last year, having Mack Hollins and Stefon Diggs in that room is really going to help, and hopefully he can embrace more of a leadership role that way. I see him being the Z receiver backup to Stefon Diggs. And if Stefon Diggs is not ready to go week 1 or misses a good chunk of the season, still recovering from his injury, well, that's going to be Kendrick Bourne. And I think that's fine. And Patriots may keep him around just for that reason too, in case there are any hiccups with Stefon Diggs and him being ready to go week 1, or if he runs into injuries later in the season. It's good to still have Kendrick Bourne on that roster. And then the 6th guy, believe it or not, who I have as the backup slot receiver, is Efton Chisholm. I have Efton Chisholm making this team. I know he's slow, but he's quick. I've said that. I said this on the last podcast. I said it on the podcast before that. Efton Chisholm has Wes Welker type speed, but with Julian Edelman type quickness. So he's not the fastest guy, but he's an effective slot receiver that can get open really quickly. You know, he's not going to get open running 20, 30 yards downfield. The DBs are going to catch up to him, but good release off the line. 2nd best receiver in Eastern Washington history. Carbon copy of Cooper Kupp, who we all were hoping the Patriots would sign this offseason. A lot of reason to keep Efton Chisholm around, and he can also contribute quite a bit on special teams as a punt returner. I see him making the roster, but that means there are 3 players that I don't have there. That's Kahan Booty, Jaylen Polk, and Javvon Baker. So we'll start with Kahan Booty and what I think is going to happen with him. I think the Patriots are going to trade him for a 5th round pick. They drafted him in the 6th round. He's on the trade block. Right now, they're probably getting offers for a 7th or 6th round pick. Patriots are going to want to at least flip him a little bit in the same way they flipped Joe Milton for an extra round pick. I see the same thing happening with Kahan Booty sometime around training camp or the preseason. He's going to stick around. They're going to want to see all these receivers compete, but someone's going to get hurt. Some good receiver's going to get hurt from a contending NFL team, and they're going to be willing to trade a 5th round pick to bring in a guy like Kahan Booty, who, as I said, looked pretty good in year 2 and could be even better in year 3. I'd love to see Booty back just because it was really encouraging what happened last season, but the Mack Hollins move, drafting Kyle Williams, really makes it hard for me to see Kahan Booty making this roster. And because he played so well in year 2, was a bit of a project as a rookie and that development is showing, there is real trade value there that I don't think you're going to get with guys like Jaylen Polk or Javvon Baker. You can probably get him for a 5th-round pick when you have a desperate potential Super Bowl contending team after one of their receivers goes down. I see that happening with Booty. He's not going to be there in September. Jaylen Polk, what happens with him? I don't see a team trading for him just because he was such a disappointment as a rookie. He was seen as plug and play on week 1, ended up having a very low floor and doesn't have the highest ceiling. Mike Vrabel did not draft this guy. As I said many times, I think he's going to be cut. I don't think Jaylen Polk is going to be traded. I don't think he's going to be placed on the practice squad. I think he's going to be cut as of right now. Again, look at the offseason workout clips. It is not encouraging. He does not look like the receiver we thought when the Patriots drafted him in 2024. I see Jaylen Polk being the lone cut candidate here. And that means Javvon Baker, I don't have the Patriots cutting. I don't see any reason to cut Javvon Baker, even if it ultimately doesn't work out. Stash him on the practice squad. If you want to carry 7 receivers, you have him there, or have him as the 6th receiver if Stephon Diggs is not ready to go, or one of these other guys gets injured. Maybe Kendrick Bourne has a hiccup because he was a little banged up from the year before. Javvon Baker, it makes sense to keep him around, put him on the practice squad, promote him when someone goes down, and continue developing him as a long-term project. But hey, let me know if you disagree. Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, your 3 primary starters, 4, 5, and 6, Matt Collins, Kendrick Bourne, and Efton Chisholm the third, all making the roster with Kahan Booty being traded, Jaylen Polk being cut, and Javvon Baker being stashed on the practice squad. Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below, or you think this will be ultimately the way it plays out. I'm curious to hear from you. But now I'm going to get into a little bit of fashion. As you know, this is my big area of expertise. Patriots are not getting new primary uniforms this season. It would have been announced before the NFL draft. You're not going to have Will Campbell holding up the number 1 jersey if you're going to change that after the draft. So we know that's not going to happen, but the Patriots, I think, should still make some updates to their uniforms this season because those blue monochrome home uniforms just aren't working, and stripes don't match at times. There's a lot of things the Patriots could do just to make them look a little bit better that's going to improve them quite a bit. So let me talk about their primary uniform at first, then I'll get into the alternates, throwbacks, and then the new rivalries uniforms that are going to be released at some point this offseason or maybe even during the regular season. I'm not sure when that's going to be announced, but we'll start with the primary uniform. Get rid of the blue pants entirely. Even for the road uniforms, they don't look that good. They really don't. It's not the same as the Dynasty uniforms, even with the road where you had the white tops and the blues. That kind of worked with the blue stripes. It just doesn't. Even with the road uniforms, it certainly doesn't work at home with the blue monochrome pajamas that they basically wear. The Patriots abandoned that midway through the season last year because the players and coaches didn't even like it. The fans complained about it. So first off, get rid of the all-blue home uniforms. Those got to go. And then even get rid of the blue pants. Let's go a little bit of 90s here. I like the white and the silver. It is a little Raiders-y, I get that, but you got the red and the blue that differentiates it a little bit. And then stick with the blue primary tops and silver pants for the home uniforms. I think that just makes a ton of sense. Now, as I mentioned, the stripes don't match. They match with the road uniforms, with the white tops and the silver pants. Those look great. Those do not need to be changed. They do wear white socks. I kind of like go with blue socks maybe, but I'm fine with the white. They look fine. Keep those as your primary road uniforms. But then for the home uniforms, change the stripes on the pants. So you're going to have 2 pairs of silver pants. You have the current ones with the red and blue stripes. And then I think you should have a home one with red and white stripes so it matches the red and white on the shoulders. It looks off. It looks like they're wearing home uniforms, home tops with away pants, which they kind of are. Don't love it. Make sure the stripes match. You're just adding another pant and changing the color for the middle stripe. I think that would look a lot better. And you know, I actually kind of like the Patriots uniforms. Like I like the color rush tops that they decided to keep when they changed their uniforms. I just don't like the all blue, and I think the stripes should match. So they don't need to make a ton of changes here, and these are changes that they are able to make under the NFL rules. So hopefully we see some updates there and get rid of the blue pants entirely and then make the stripes match, at least for the home uniforms. So then I'm going to get to the red throwbacks here. My opinion is these should no longer be throwbacks. They should be alternate uniforms. Unfortunately, that would mean getting rid of the retro Pat Patriot logo on the helmets. It's too retro. It's only appropriate for a throwback. And I know there's a lot of Patriots fans that have said, we need to make the throwbacks the primary uniforms. It doesn't work with that little cartoon logo. I'm sorry. It's just not modern. It's fun for a week or two. It doesn't work. So I think they should keep the throwbacks, change the helmets, and then make them the alternate uniforms. Not throwbacks. They're number 2 uniforms that they wear on occasion. And I think they should do a nod to 1960. The first Patriots uniform had what was called the tri-corner hat logo on the helmet. Like I said, it's from the year 1960, but it actually kind of fits the modern look for NFL helmets. It has a Pat Patriot hat in blue, a Revolutionary War type hat with the red number below it. The number will obviously be different for each player. I absolutely love these. These were basically the original Patriot uniforms before they added the cartoon Patriot throwback that we're all used to. I say you go back to these helmets and then just make the same red uniform with the white pants and make those your alternates. I think that would be great. It's a good happy medium between making these your primary uniforms, but also not having them as throwbacks so you can wear them more often. Like I said, everyone talks about they should go back to the red jerseys full time. It doesn't work for a few reasons. Like I said, the cartoon logo is fun, but it would look silly full time. There's also the Revolutionary War. The British were the redcoats. It never made sense that the Patriots wore red as their primary uniform. It's fun for an alternate, but stick with the navy blue. That's what the Americans wore. The colonists wore in the Revolutionary War. We're not celebrating the redcoats. It just doesn't make sense as a primary uniform. It's also a nod to when the Patriots kind of sucked. You know, they made one Super Bowl when they wore those against the 86 Bears, and we saw how that turned out. I think you change the helmets, which has a little bit more of a modern look compared to the cartoon logo. Even though it's a real throwback, I think it has more of a modern look. You keep the red throwbacks, and you just make them alternates, and retire throwbacks altogether. These are your secondary jerseys. I think that's a great idea without having to make these your primary uniforms, because I do love the red uniforms. I don't want to see them every week. So I think this is a good happy medium for that. And then you have the NFL rivalries uniforms. It says the NFL is introducing a new uniform initiative called Rivalries, which is inspired by the NFL's take on the NBA's City Edition and MLB's City Connect jerseys. This program will feature specially designed Nike uniforms and fan gear, and each participating team will wear a unique Rivalries uniform during a single home game against a division rival. So there's a real chance that these are real flashy. They may give the Patriots a blue or red helmet. I don't know what they're going to do with this. Chances are it's going to be a very modern look. But I think this is a great opportunity to bring back the Royal Blues from the 90s. Pats fans were very disappointed that these weren't introduced again this offseason. There were a bunch of rumors that the Royal Blues were coming back. There were rumors that the Patriots were going to completely rebrand and go back to the 90s and wear the Royal Blue uniforms and do all of that. I didn't love that idea, but I did love the idea of bringing back the Royal Blues as a throwback. And, you know, they're not good full-time units. They're not really great uniforms, but they're fun for a game. You got the giant Flying Elvis logo on the shoulders, checkered pattern in the uniform, shiny silver pants. I think this works with rivalries because the 90s, the era where the Patriots wore these uniforms, that's when the rivalry was real between the Patriots and the Jets. I know the Patriots got eliminated in the playoffs in 2013, but for the most part, during the Dynasty era, Jets-Patriots was not a real rivalry. They were in the 90s, definitely. We know Bill Parcells coached the Patriots in these uniforms, later became the Jets head coach, had a really bad falling out with Robert Kraft, announced he was leaving before they played in the Super Bowl. There was Curtis Martin, who was a star running back in these uniforms in New England. Patriots couldn't pay him when his contract ran out, and the Jets snagged him away. That hurt. And of course, Bill Belichick, he never coached the Patriots in these uniforms, but there's of course the history of him briefly being the New York Jets head coach before leaving for New England. His first season in New England was with the dynasty uniforms, but he certainly coached against these Royal Blues. There is a bit of a history there with the Jets. I think this is a great opportunity. Do I think Nike's going to do it? No, they're going to come up with some shiny navy blue helmet or put some interesting pattern on it or something, but I think this is the way to do it, right? You make these minor tweaks just to make the stripes look a little bit better on the primary uniforms. You update the helmet on the retro throwback uniforms and make them your alternates. And then you take the 90s Royal Blues, make them your rivalry uniforms, but those are really the new throwback uniforms. I think that's a great idea. So, I don't know. Let me know if you disagree. I know a lot of people don't love the Royal Blues. Some people just think they never should have gotten rid of them. So, I don't know. But I was a little bummed to see the Patriots. They did have an opportunity in the 4 or 5 year cycle where they can change their primary uniforms. They chose not to this year. I do have some minor ideas for how the Patriots should change those when that day finally comes. I really like what the Denver Broncos do with their uniforms. I don't love their uniforms. I think they should have stuck with the late John Elway, Peyton Manning Super Bowl uniforms. I think those look great with the occasional orange and blue throwbacks from the 80s and 90s. But they have this stripe on their primary uniforms right here on the shoulder that's subtle and compact with the Nike logo on top of it. I think the Patriots could do something very similar with the red stripes in the Flying Elvis logo. Now, I'm not talking about like the 90s uniforms, as I mentioned, with the giant Flying Elvis on the shoulders. I'm saying that little compact stripe, you could turn that into the red and white flag, that streamers that come off of the Flying Elvis logo. And I think that would look really good. I did see a concept on X that had this, and I didn't like the rest of the uniform, but it did update that stripe, and it looked pretty good. And I think you could do that, add the numbers to the high shoulders, like they had in the Dynasty era, and then kind of keep the primary uniforms the same font for the numbers, same gray pants, and do something similar with the road uniforms, white top, silver pants, and then just that subtle stripe. It wouldn't look all that different from what the Patriots have right now, but it would look a little less generic. It would look a little more Patriots, and I also think I loved how the Patriots had their logo, the stripe, and then the number all on the shoulders in the Dynasty uniforms. I wouldn't put the logo there. I would just have the stripe, but put the number back up there. I think those would be real classy uniforms with a bit of a modern flair, but let me know if you disagree. Do you like these ideas for the Patriots uniforms? Let me know in the comments below. But that's it for this episode of PatsCast. A lot of things coming up. Of course, rookie minicamp. I think it's 1 day away now. Not going to be a ton of news coming out of that. The Patriots are kind of have some closed doors since they got together. So this isn't going to be like the Gerard Mayo regime where things are leaking all over the place. It's going to be a bit more like Belichick, but we'll certainly have coverage there. NFL schedule release next week, and of course, training camp not that far away. We'll be here at PatsCast to cover it. You're not going to want to miss it. And if you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we'll see you very soon.
PatsCast buzzing, who's gonna stay? Receiver room's tight, can't keep all the play. Kendrick Bourne, been around the block. Crafty vet keeps the room on lock. He's battled through pain, still got the fight. Reliable hands in the Foxborough night. Age shows up and the wheels ain't prime, but Bourne's worth keeping one more time. Yeah, PatsCast deep in the receiver zone. Some gotta leave, some get that phone. Cuts are coming, truth gets told only if you go where that goes. came in with hype, but the rookie year, it just wasn't right. Low floor, no flash, didn't make that leap. Might be time to let that promise sleep. Kahan Booty, year to burst, but where he fits, still kinda cursed. Talent's real, that's plain to see, but this room's crowded, might need a new team. Trade could fetch a pick, make another squad. PatsCast saying trade him, that's not odd. Javvon Baker, the long shot name, raw but hungry, loves the game. A project piece, but don't lose hope. Could stash him on the squad to help him cope. Still got time and tools to grow. Keep him close, let development flow. Yeah, PatsCast deep in the receiver zone. Some gotta leave, some get that phone. Bourne's the vet and Baker stays. Booty gets moved, Polk fades away.